So I want to talk a little bit about the journey. I got pretty frustrated because I'd read all the recipe books that are out there on how to build a great company. And it was pretty clear steps. You do these 7 steps and you get an incredible company. And I realized that this joke stopped being funny when I started to recognize some of these turns in the road, because there are so many surprises that hit you. And I really found that the entrepreneurs, like Mike went out and interviewed all these entrepreneurs and found out what the reality is. And he went out and did it himself. And my eureka moment was when I read the Richard Branson biography, because he really talked about the challenges that happen that are surprises, that have nothing to do with you making a mistake. It just is hard. And I wanted to tell you a couple of those for us. We were doing amazing until 2007. At the end of 2008, the recession hit and things piled hard. We lost significant market and we had to lay off a bunch of people, multiple rounds of layoffs, and my CFO said, "It's not looking good, I'm out." And so as he was packing up his bags and saying goodbye, he passed my son on his way to his death. And my son has suffered his whole life from depression and had a lot of self-harm and things like that going on in his life. And that day happened to be a rough day where the kids decided that he was bisexual and started to bully him about that. And he came home just distraught. And I had gone off to Toronto through Denver to go and try to sell some bulldozers to keep the company in business. And my son took the car, came home very frustrated and sad, talked to my wife, talked him through it. We thought he was doing pretty good. He decided he needed to get away, so he took the vehicle. The police turned on their lights and started to chase him, and then he died in a rollover. But he was brain dead, and they weren't sure how it was going to go, and I was in the Denver airport, and so I got a call, and they said, "You need to come home. It doesn't seem serious, but we need you to get back here as soon as possible." And so I ran, got a rental car, and started to drive because the airport got shut down from a snowstorm, and there were no flights out. So I started to drive, and then they gave me news, actually, he's brain dead, but if you want to say goodbye, you need to hurry. And so drove as fast as I could, but the snowstorm shut down the highway, and so I had to stay over that evening in a hotel and waited. At 5 o'clock, they let us out, and so we got back on the road. A couple of hours down the road, there was a car accident, someone died, and they shut down the road again. And so sitting in a snowstorm on the side of the road, they said, "We need to turn off his life support system so that he can give his organs that he was hoping to donate. Do you want to listen on the cell phone?" And so I got to hear those final beeps saying goodbye to my son. And incredibly blessed with healing after that, but that burning why just tortured me. And this is him, and such a special kid. He was so kind, and that is one of the things about people who suffer from depression, is they're sensitive of other people and their feelings, and I could not figure out why he would be taken. And I've always liked this quote from Covey, which said, "Until a person could say deeply and honestly, 'I am what I am today because of my choices yesterday,' that person cannot say, 'I choose otherwise.'" And that's about empowerment, that until you can take responsibility for what's happened to you and take credit and responsibility for those choices, you cannot choose a different future. And that's interesting. And then I read this story, and it was about a guy named Don Wood, and he had a dream after he was going into a nasty surgery, and he dreamed that he was in a life before this life, and they were teaching about what you needed to learn in this life. And the teacher wrote the word cystic fibrosis on the whiteboard, and that's what he was suffering from. And he saw himself raise his hand and volunteer to take that challenge. And he said, "No longer did I consider myself a victim after I woke up, that I chose that. And so no longer is it God did something to me, no longer is it the consequences of the universe, whatever, that that was my choice, and changed his attitude, changed his response to everything that was going on, and that just blew my mind. Like, wow, what if it doesn't matter if it's real or not, I'm going to try this mindset on, and it is incredible. And now when you read this, until a person can deeply and honestly say, I am what I am today because of my choices, that means anything that happens to you. And that is powerful. I call it the absolute ownership. You own whatever happens to you. And it's a mindset flip. My daughter that we're adopting right here, named Olivia, she was born to a lady living on the street. And she can grow up with that feeling of I'm unwanted, I am garbage, or I'm one of the valiant and brave who volunteered so a paraplegic could have a child, because she was adopted by my sister-in-law before she died after 7 years, and we were able to adopt her. How does she see herself? My wife was sexually abused by her dad. Does she see herself as a worthless object, or does she see herself as one of the strong ones who was willing to go and stop that cycle and to stand up and stop the abuse from happening? And so what I'm talking about is, what is the best, healthiest, most empowering response you can have to anything that happens in your life? My son suffered from depression. I'm worthless, there is no hope. Or I was one of the brave ones willing to take a rough journey to help others. After my son died, 9 girls came up to us and said that they were his girlfriend, that he didn't want us to know, but that he was someone that made them feel special, that built them up. Like it says on the tombstone, you were, quotes here from friends, you were nice enough to come up and be my friend when I had none at all. Another person said, you just love me for me. He was so kind to other people, and that comes with that depression. You're so much more sensitive to others. If I see that as that willingness to take the hard road, then I act differently, both if I have that and towards those who do. So that shout for joy quest, we call it. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about life before and that all the sons shouted for joy. So that's what we use at work and ask that question. Why did I volunteer and shout for joy for this challenge? And we even used it this week with something that was hitting us. Like, why the heck did I shout for joy for this? Because it is killing me. And you're looking for the brilliance, the upside, the positive from it. And another way to ask that same question is, how can I respond to this so that I will look back and shout for joy that it happened? What can I do to add to this side so that the suffering we had for losing our son outweighs and gets me to that point where I can shout for joy that I lost my son and put him in the ground? And so I do things like this PowerPoint. I look at the things that I have learned that has made me better. Last year I was looking in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. My hair was not where I wanted it to be. And then the thought came to my mind, well, you shouted for joy for this. You volunteered for it, you idiot. And well, why would I do that? Well, maybe I'm someone who chose a harder path. I chose that I wanted someone who would marry me for my insides. If I was good looking, I may have got a superficial woman, but I got an amazing woman who liked what was inside. So then when I look at myself in the mirror or other people who are ugly, the more ugly they are, the braver they are, the more powerful they are, the more I admire them. Complete mindset flip, right? The same with LGBT. Those are people who are oppressed that I have in the past looked at negatively as someone I don't understand, and that's pretty weird. If I look at them and these are actual quotes from my friends who are LGBT, who I love, and change that to the brave ones who volunteered for that so that I could learn how to unconditionally love someone who's different than me. Wow, now I look at them differently. So, do we look at our suffering as punishment, or do we look at it as muscle building that gives us strength for the future challenges and the future wins that we're aching for? I loved the airball game with Kobe Bryant. He was a rookie. They're playing the Jazz. He shot 3 airballs, lost the game for them, and he went home, went to his high school, shot all that night, and committed to shoot every morning, to lift weights, and to work his tail off to never have that happen again. And that pain that he went through, he looked back and he said it was misery. But I look at it with fond memories now because of where it got me. And so as we are going through rough experiences, do we look at that as the key for my future trophies? Or do we look at that as, why is this happening to me? It's not fair. This sucks. Very different perspective, and you get far better results.